Welcome to Legacy Leaders, a weekly talk show with national and local thought leaders on issues impacting the South Florida Black community. Now introducing our host, Anne-Marie Sorrell.
Welcome to Legacy Leaders. I'm your host, Anne-Marie Sorrell, President and CEO of the Mosaic Group, your award-winning global marketing and advertising and PR agency. Today, I'm joined by Joe Scott, Broward County Supervisor of Elections, and today we will discuss the latest happenings as it relates to the upcoming election year. As you all know, this is a big election year. So welcome, Joe Scott.
Hi, Anne-Marie. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. Man, you have a lot going on this year, I'm sure.
Absolutely. It's a busy year. We're already started with the presidential preference primary coming up here in just a couple of weeks. So we're well on our way. The 2024 train has officially left the station.
Absolutely. So before we dive into the elections and the election cycle and all things that voters should be aware of this year, let's talk about your background and who you are, where you're from. What was your journey to becoming Broward County Supervisor of Elections?
So I actually started my career as an Army officer. I graduated from West Point in 2004. I spent the first years of my professional career overseas. A lot of times I was a young lieutenant in South Korea near the demilitarized zone during a very eventful time when North Korea tested their first nuclear weapon, when they tested their first long-range missile. So there was a lot going on there. I was promoted to captain in 2007. That's also the year that my son was born. And after I was promoted to captain, I ended up getting assigned to be a embedded advisor with the Iraqi army. So I spent a year in Iraq. My son was an infant. I was over there living with the Iraqi army. I lived with them, fought with them, everything for a whole year. And after that, I decided I had spent enough time in the military. I was good on that part. I didn't want to spend any more time away from my son. So I left the military, went to business school. I went to Villanova to get my MBA, and I started working in the private sector. And I did that right up until the time that I decided to get involved in politics, and I ran for office in 2020. It was my first time running for office, and I ran for Supervisor of Elections because I thought it was a really good fit with my background, and the public agreed, and I was elected, and that's what brought me here.
That's awesome. Well, for the public who may not know, what exactly is your specific role as a Supervisor of Elections?
So for me, my job is to be responsible for getting people registered to vote and for holding all of the elections that we have here in Broward County for all the government entities that exist. So we have 31 different cities in Broward County. So we're responsible for all those city elections that happen, as well as the county level officials, state, federal, all of those elections. We're responsible for conducting them. We're responsible for maintaining the voter rolls and keeping the voter rolls clean as far as removing people when they need to be removed and making sure that people have ample opportunity to get added, and just the overall infrastructure around elections, like making sure that we have, the facilities that we need to conduct both, just to be able to manage our load of vote by mail. So Broward County has about 1.1 million voters. So we have to, make sure that we're prepared to handle hundreds of thousands of vote by mail ballots. We've got to be prepared to do early voting for hundreds of thousands of people. We have more than 24 different locations that we conduct early voting for up to 2 weeks before the elections. And then we have hundreds of locations, 358 different polling places that we manage on election day. So just all the logistics around that, training the poll workers and everything that has to do with making elections happen in Broward County.
Wow, that's a huge responsibility. And we already know that elections, and we're going to talk a little bit about that, are just under the radar. There's a lot of efforts for voter suppression. There's a lot of, as we know, with the Arizona and Georgia and all these different places where some persons felt like an election was stolen or there was voter fraud. So you pretty much have your hands full, and we're going to dive into some of that a little bit later in our discussion. But can you give us the latest on what's happening with voter registration in Florida and vote by mail ballots? Because I do understand, I believe there's some new policies or laws in place. Is that correct?
Absolutely. And just to give you a little bit of context here in the state of Florida, we've definitely had our ups and downs over the last couple of decades. Florida, when we think about Florida elections, people always go back to 2000 and the fact that Florida was the place where the 2000 election was decided. And, it came down to this very tumultuous recount scenario that went on, and a lot of concern about how votes were being cast and how people were deciding how the votes were being adjudicated. So, Florida's been through a lot. In 2018, we saw a lot of upheaval and problems, and that's part of the reason that I'm, sitting in the seat today, is because of things that happened in the 2018 election and the recounts that followed that one. But Florida had gotten to a point where, surprisingly, going into the 2020 election, we were seen as a model for the country. There's a certain sore loser who, since the 2020 election, has been running around the country telling everybody that something went wrong. However, that particular sore loser didn't have any complaints about Florida. Florida had it together. We had it right. By all accounts, we were the model, we were the best in 2020, before the 2020 election and in the immediate aftermath of the 2020 election. Nevertheless, since that 2020 election, we've actually seen 3 new laws get passed in Tallahassee. They came in 2021 with all these new ideas to make it more difficult for people to vote, more difficult for people to get registered. And then after they passed that law in 2021, it wasn't enough. They came back for another bite at the apple in 22, another one in 23. And believe it or not, we have our legislature in session right now in Tallahassee, and they are hard at work, continuously trying to introduce new election bills that are going to restrict the ability for people to vote by mail, and of course, make it more difficult for people to register and easier for people to get removed. So I just kind of give you that context to just sort of explain that if there's anything people in Florida need to understand now, is that it is more difficult than it's ever been before to get registered to vote. And it's far easier than it's ever been before to get removed from the rolls.
And that is so ridiculous, that in a country where we're supposed to be all about democracy, we are making it much more difficult for people to voice the one thing that they have to be heard, which is their vote.
Absolutely.
I really don't understand that. So please elaborate on these laws, and so that those who are tuned in can be prepared and know what action they need to take, their families, their friends, their neighbors, their coworkers need to take.
Right. So we're working hard at the local level to make it as easy as possible for people to participate. So if you go to our website, especially if you live in Broward County, browardvotes.gov is our website. We do have a button right there where you can go online and you can actually check your status and make sure that you're still good, that you're still on the rolls. The main thing here is that the biggest change that has happened as far as voter registration has to do with third-party voter registration organizations. So these are more or less your community groups that are going out and conducting voter registration drives in the community. The reason these groups are important is because the primary way people in Florida get registered to vote is through the DMV. So when they go to get a driver's license. But anybody who doesn't need a driver's license is more than likely going to get completely left out of the system. So, think young people, people who maybe if you don't own a car, if you ride public transportation, then that's the type of people who tend to get left out and don't get registered to vote. And third-party voter registration organizations have always played a huge role in capturing that part of our community and making sure that those people are registered and able to participate. Florida has made it almost impossible for third-party voter registration organizations to operate. But here in Broward County, we've come up with a new system that allows groups to go out and provide people with a voter registration application that they can then send in themselves. Because the main problem with those groups is that they're not going to be able to kind of collect those voter registration applications and turn them in. But we now have a system here in Broward County where we can easily distribute voter registration applications that can then be mailed back without an envelope or a stamp and automatically come to our office. So we've really tried to make it a lot more streamlined, in particular for people who are not going to the DMV. Plus, you also have the online system as well. So whether you're a tech savvy person who can go do it on your phone, or if you need the assistance of doing it with pen and paper, we've made it easier for folks to be able to do that.
So Joe, we're going to pause right there because we need to take a quick commercial break, but I want to come back so that you can elaborate on that point. And so people are very clear, especially the different groups that are out there, on how they can make voter registration happen. So stay with us. We'll be right back after this quick commercial break.
I grew up down here in South Florida, so for me, it's a little bit more personal.
For the Mesman & Dover Law Firm, it's about community.
For us, South Florida's our home. You all are our people.
Our family. Our future.
The difference we'll make for you, your loved ones, your kids, matters, because to us, it's personal.
If you need us, call us 24/7 at 866-954-MORE.
That's 866-954-6673. Demesman & Dover Law Firm, youraccidentattorneys.com.
Help comes in many forms. As a Miami-Dade County bus operator, you can help your community, help those in need, and even help yourself. Operators have the opportunity to earn more than $50,000 a year plus built-in overtime, earn more than 13 paid holidays and vacation days, and take advantage of the tuition reimbursement program. Plus, qualified new drivers will receive a $5,000 sign-on bonus. Become a driving force in our community. Apply now at miamidade.gov/busdriver.
Welcome back, Joe. Thank you for being with us again. So you were talking about the third-party registration and how people can fill out their voter registration application, send it in themselves. So to be clear, the third-party organizations cannot turn in voters registrations for people. Is that what it is? Is that the change?
So the change really has to do with the fact that the requirements have gotten a lot more strenuous for people. And because the requirements are so much more strenuous, and then there's fines and different penalties if people make mistakes, that for a lot of groups, they're not willing to take the risk. But the good news about it is that you really don't need to anymore because of the new, at least I would say in Broward County, because of the new system that we have now with these, the trifold handouts that we use. So basically we have these handouts that we give to groups if they want them. And they can basically use these handouts as a voter registration form, vote by mail request. It's put together in a way that you can send it back without an envelope or a stamp. And basically anybody can get these. So my plan, long-term plan here is that these handouts are available in community centers, barbershops, beauty salons. Just anywhere, churches, different places in the community. These things are available. And if somebody needs to register to vote, they can do that. They can pull it out. They have a QR code they can scan. They can do it from their phone if they're tech savvy. If you're not tech savvy, you fill out the paper, you drop it in the mail. You don't need an envelope or a stamp. You fill it out, you seal it up, you drop it in the mail, and it comes back to my office. So basically, this is a new system that we just put in a couple of years ago. It's really catching on in the community. A lot of people are already using it. And really, it's just to counteract the fact that the third party, the traditional way of doing a voter registration drive, I honestly don't recommend people do that anymore. Of course you can, and it's just a whole process that you have to go through to get there. And I just recommend, I think it's much better to do it this way, the way that I'm recommending. But the other side of that, of course, we're talking about getting registered. On the other side of that, the removal part of it, the state has made it far more efficient, the process of removing people. And what it really centers around is if your address changes and you don't update us. So again, this is going to disproportionately impact people who don't drive, who don't have a driver's license. So think about people who rent and ride the bus. Those are the most vulnerable people in the community to get removed from the rolls or to never get registered in the first place. So if you move, for the most part, for most people, if you go to get a new driver's license, you update your address on the new driver's license, you're good to go. But a lot of people don't, especially if you move often. You might wait until your driver's license expires before you update your address on your driver's license. That's very common. Technically, there's a timeline that you're supposed to update anytime you move, but generally, folks are busy, right? So the way the system is designed now is that, like, if we send you a piece of mail and you're not at that address anymore and the mail bounces back, or anything, you're basically on the clock that if you're not updating your address soon, you're going to get removed. Then we have sort of checks that we go through periodically. Once a year, we have to do certain checks. So we're going to probably identify people who are not living at the address that we have on file. And those people are going to be in the queue to get removed from the voter rolls. So that to me, that's the thing that's sort of catching the most people. Not to me, I mean, that's what it is. So that's what's catching most people. And the fact is that the state of Florida has made that system so much better and so much more efficient that a lot more people are getting caught now.
Wow. And then what about, I heard about the, if you don't vote in X amount of election cycles, that you're also going to be made inactive and removed from the voter rolls. Is that accurate?
That is correct. So just this past fall, so basically in every odd number year, what we do is we basically have to run a report and find all the people who haven't participated in the last, basically. So when we did it this past fall, we went to before the 2020 general election. So if you did not vote in the 2020 general election or any election since then, you got a notification from us. If you didn't respond to that notification, then you became inactive. Now, once you become inactive, you basically have 2 more election cycles to do something. Either show up to vote, request a vote by mail ballot, or just respond to the notice that we sent you. Do something so that you can be reactivated. And if you're not reactivated, then you become ineligible and you have to reapply. You have to register to vote all over again. So
wow.
So that's where a whole lot of folks did become inactive this time. It was sort of the first big kind of cleanup since that law changed. Because the law changed and because the system is different now, we ended up catching a lot more people than we did in the past, and a lot more people got removed. And there was just this really huge change that sort of triggered a lot of stories. There was a lot of news in the press about how much the voter rolls got reduced this time. And it's because the law changed and because the system is different now than it was in the past.
Wow. So what my takeaway is, number one, if you're not registered to vote, register to vote. And you can do so with these brochures. You can do it online. You can do it with a mail-in voter registration. If you have not updated your address for whatever reason, update your address so that way you can get your accurate voter registration card. And if you have not voted in any of the last 2 election cycles, be sure to update your registration, request a vote by mail ballot, or do something to trigger that you are an active voter in the system. So hopefully those who are tuned in take those actions, because as you can see, there are many laws each year that goes by that is trying to further discourage us from voting. Now, let's talk about 2024. This is a really big election year, and sometimes people are paying attention, sometimes they don't. What should people pay attention to this election year, 2024?
I'm encouraging everybody, first and foremost, is to just take a minute, go to your Supervisor of Elections website in Broward, that's browardvotes.gov, and request your vote by mail ballot to get your vote by mails for all the elections happening this year. You don't have to vote by mail just because you request it. The good thing is that it gives you the option to vote by mail if you choose to. All right, besides voting by mail, the other 2 ways you can vote is in-person early voting, which is a great option because you can actually go anywhere in your county, as opposed to waiting until that last day, which a lot of us like to do. But I'm hoping this could be the first year that we see a big sort of sea change of folks actually voting early, either by mail or in person. Just don't wait till the last day. You have more options. The last day, it's a Tuesday. You probably have to go to work. You might have to pick up the kids after work. There might be an accident on I-95. That's been known to happen from time to time, right? Right. So I think we've got to keep in mind that waiting until the last day has its perils, where if you, for some reason, something happens, you don't make it to the polls, now you're out. And that's what happens to a lot of people, and that affects our turnout. Voting early allows you to vote anywhere in your county, and you can go during the day somewhere that's close to your job. You could do it on your lunch break. You can usually get in and out a lot faster than you can when you go to your neighborhood polling place on election day. If you wait until the last day, you really have one option, and that's to vote in person at your polling place.
Absolutely. We're going to take another quick commercial break, Joe. And when we come back, really want to highlight, I think there's either 2 or 3 elections this year. So I want to make sure people are clear on what's coming up, the different types of seats that are up for election, so that they know it's not just about the presidential seat. There are many local and state seats and federal seats that are up as well. So we'll be right back after this commercial.
All right.
I grew up down here in South Florida, so for me, it's a little bit more personal.
For the Mesman & Dover Law Firm, it's about community.
For us, South Florida's our home. You all are our people.
Our family, our future.
The difference we'll make for you, your loved ones, your kids, matters, because to us, it's personal.
If you need us, call us 24/7 at 866-954-MORE.
That's 866-954-6673. The Mesman & Dover Law Firm, youraccidentattorneys.com.
Help comes in many forms. As a Miami-Dade County bus operator, you can help your community, help those in need, and even help yourself. Operators have the opportunity to earn more than $50,000 a year plus built-in overtime, earn more than 13 paid holidays and vacation days, and take advantage of the tuition reimbursement program. Plus, qualified new drivers will receive a $5,000 sign-on bonus. Become a driving force in our community. Apply now at miamidade.gov/busdriver.
Welcome back, Joe. So before we went into our commercial break, want to just talk briefly about the various seats that are up for election this year, so people understand that this is not only about the presidential contest, that there are other very important seats. And of course, we don't have to get into any candidates or parties, but just so people are aware that this year is a really huge year to get out the vote, and we need voter turnout. So can you elaborate on that a bit?
Sure. Yes. So basically, we do have a presidential preference primary that's going to be on March 19th. That's the one that's immediately coming up. So as far as that election goes, it is only the Republican Party that's having a primary here in the state of Florida. So you have to be registered. It's a closed primary. So the deadline if you wanted to change your party to participate in that deadline is already passed. So basically, if you are currently registered as a Republican, you can participate. If you're not currently registered as a Republican, you will not be able to vote in that election. Now, on the same day, there are a lot of city elections that are happening. The big one for us here in Broward County is Pembroke Pines, but there's other cities as well. And I'd like to encourage everybody across South Florida to look and see if your city is having a March election. And if they are, it'll be on March 19th. And those are incredibly important. The turnout tends to be very low, but that's the government that is closest to you, the government that has the most impact on your day-to-day life. We show up to vote for the president, who probably is the most distant and really least impactful, but we don't show up the same way for our city elections, and I would love to see that change. In August is another important primary election as well. In August, you see your school board members on the ballot. You see judges on the ballot, those are elections that everybody can participate in right now, the school boards and the judges. And then you also have your party primaries for your legislative offices. So that's happening in August. To vote in the party primaries for the legislative offices, you do have to be registered with the political party of the candidates you want to support. And that has to be done 29 days before the election. So it's a good idea. I mean, especially here in South Florida. And I'll tell you, for a lot of the legislative offices, the partisan legislative offices, we have this thing called gerrymandering. And these districts are kind of set in terms of who's going to win in November. All right. And might be a little controversial to say that, but it's just the truth. Gerrymandering is real. So if you want to talk about what election is really the decisive election that determines who's going to be in those seats, that election happens in August. not in November. Because once we're done with August, for the most part, for most of those offices, we already know with a pretty good determination on who's going to be there. And that's because of gerrymandering. It's not because of anything like that happens in the elections office. It's because of the way that the lines were drawn and the way the districts were drawn, that they're very heavily slanted towards one party or the other.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for being with us, Joe. We can talk about the elections a lot more. There's so much more to cover, but we do have a short time with our show. So let's give everyone the website once again for the Supervisor Elections Office so they can be sure to register to vote. And if they're not in Broward County, please advise them on where they can register to vote.
Sure. So yes. So for Broward County, browardvotes.gov is your one-stop shop. You can find all your information there. Also, for more information, you can follow us on social media at Broward Votes. You can also call or text our office at 954-357-VOTE. Now, if you're not, there's Register to Vote Florida is a good place. If you actually just Google Register to Vote Florida, you could get the state's website that you can go on, and the state has a website as well that you can go on and find your voter registration.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Joe Scott, Broward County Supervisor of Elections, for being with me today. And thank you all for tuning in. I'm your host, Anne Marie Sorrell, and see you next time on Legacy Leaders.